My name is Chloe. I'm 25 years old. Today I'm going to talk about the day that my parents didn't attend my wedding because I didn't marry their choice. It's a pleasure to have you here. Stay tuned until the end and tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far my story has gone. And click on like, subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss the next stories here on the channel. I used to think that if I just tried hard enough, they'd finally see me. As a little girl, I would stand in the hallway, holding up my school drawings, waiting for my mom to notice. Sometimes she'd nod without looking, sometimes she'd say, "Put it on the fridge," and sometimes, most times, she'd just walk past me, too busy talking to my brother. Ethan was the golden child. He could do no wrong. Straight A's? Applause. A scraped knee from playing soccer? My mother would drop everything to fuss over him. Meanwhile, I learned how to treat my own wounds by age 7. My father barely spoke unless he was correcting me. Sit up straight, Chloe. Don't interrupt your brother. Why are you so sensitive? That one hurt the most. Because I was sensitive. I felt everything deeply. And the older I got, the harder it became to hide the sting of being invisible. By the time I was in high school, I'd stopped trying to impress them. I stayed out of trouble, got good grades, but nothing I did seemed to matter. My brother got a new car for graduating. I got a pat on the back and a reminder not to fall behind in college. I met Leo during my sophomore year of university. He was in his final year of a mechanical engineering program, working nights to help his mom pay rent. He wasn't flashy, but he was kind. Steady. I liked that about him. We started dating quietly, without much fanfare. I knew how my parents would react. Leo wasn't from our world, as my mom would put it. He didn't wear designer clothes, didn't come from a family with money, didn't have potential connections to offer. What he did have was integrity, and a gentleness I had never known. I waited over a year before telling my parents about him. When I did, my mom's face turned to stone. "Chloe, you're too young to ruin your future." "I'm not ruining anything, Mom. I love him." She laughed, an ugly bitter sound. "Love? You think that's enough?" My father, as always, stayed quiet at first. Then he said, "If you're serious about this boy, don't expect our support." I didn't cry in front of them, but I went home and lay on the floor of my apartment, the weight of their rejection pressing into my chest like a boulder. Leo held me while I sobbed into his shoulder, whispering, "We'll make our own family." We got engaged a year later. No big announcement. No party. Just the two of us sitting on the floor eating takeout, smiling like idiots. It was the happiest I'd ever been. When I called my mom to tell her, she hung up. I sent them a wedding invitation anyway. Handwritten. Carefully worded. I told them I loved them. That I'd love for them to be there. That I still hoped we could find a way to be close. I never got a reply. Not even a returned RSVP. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I held on to this childish hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd show up anyway. That my mom would come last minute, maybe in tears, saying she was sorry. That my dad would walk me down the aisle like I used to dream about when I was 12. I even reserved their seats in the front row. Left them empty. The morning of my wedding, I sat in a little dressing room of a modest chapel. Leo's mom helped me into my dress. She kissed my forehead and called me daughter. I broke down right there, mascara smearing across my face, not from nerves but from grief. I felt like an orphan in a wedding gown. Outside, the ceremony was about to begin. The music started. Everyone stood. I clutched my bouquet with shaking hands and took one last look at the two empty chairs up front. A part of me still hoped I'd see them walking in late. They didn't. I walked down the aisle alone. And with every step I took, I told myself it was okay. That I was okay. That I was walking into a new life. One where I didn't have to beg to be seen. But deep inside, a voice kept whispering, "If they didn't show up for this, will they ever show up for anything?" And I didn't have an answer. I wish that had been the end of it. That I could say I moved on, married the love of my life and never looked back. But when your own parents cut you off, they don't just disappear. They find ways to haunt you, even from afar. What came next was even worse. I didn't think they could hurt me more than they already had. But I was wrong. About 2 months after the wedding, I received a group family photo via text. My aunt had sent it. It was from a barbecue at my parents' house. My brother was there, along with his wife, my cousins, even some family friends I barely remembered. Everyone was smiling, relaxed, like nothing had changed. There was one person missing: me. It wasn't just that I hadn't been invited. That photo, sent with a message that read, "Wish you were here," felt like a punch in the gut. A confirmation that my absence wasn't an accident. It was policy. I showed Leo the message, trying to keep my face neutral. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the screen. Then he quietly deleted the photo, kissed my temple, and went back to fixing dinner. That silence from him meant everything. He didn't feed my anger. He didn't try to fix it. He just stayed. Still, something cracked in me after that. Up until then, I think some part of me still believed I was on some sort of timeout. That eventually, they'd come around. That they'd realize what they were doing and invite me back in. But that photo proved otherwise. I hadn't been put aside. I had been erased. The next time I spoke to my mom, I called her. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for closure. Or maybe I just wanted her to acknowledge me. To say something. She answered like nothing had happened. "Hi, sweetie. You didn't come to my wedding." She sighed. "Chloe, we didn't approve. We weren't going to support a mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated. My voice felt hollow. "You mean Leo?" "I mean the whole thing. You're too young. You had so much potential. You threw it away for love." There was so much I wanted to say. That Leo treated me better than they ever had. That I was happy. That they had no idea who I was anymore. But I didn't. I just said, "I sent you an invitation. I begged you to come." My mom went quiet. Then, "You made your choice." And that was it. That was the last time we spoke for nearly 3 years. They stopped acknowledging birthdays, holidays, everything. My brother and I exchanged a few awkward messages, but even he eventually stopped. He had his own life, his own agenda, and I was too inconvenient to fit into it. Leo's family became mine. His mother, Teresa, treated me like her own. She invited us over for Sunday dinners, sent me texts just to check in, remembered my favorite tea. It felt foreign. Warmth without conditions. Meanwhile, I watched from the sidelines as my parents went on with their lives like I didn't exist. They traveled, hosted dinners, posted photos with Ethan and his wife. My cousin got married and I wasn't invited. My uncle died and I found out through Facebook. Every time I saw a new post, a new moment I had missed, I'd feel that same old ache. Like a bruise that never fully healed. Leo asked me once, "Do you want me to talk to them?" I shook my head. They don't want to hear anything from you. And honestly, I don't think they'd listen. Still, the wound remained open. I kept hoping, quietly, secretly, that someday I'd get a message. That they'd say they were sorry. That they'd come to my door and ask to start again. But that message never came. Instead, what came was something far more unexpected and cruel. A package. A simple manila envelope addressed in my mother's handwriting. Inside, a copy of the family trust, a note, and a legal document. They had removed me from everything. The house, the estate, the retirement accounts, all of it. "As you have chosen to separate yourself from the family," the note read, "we are respecting your wishes." I sat on the floor for hours, the papers spread out around me like broken glass. I wasn't crying. Not yet. I just stared at the words, reading them over and over. It was final. It was intentional. It was their goodbye. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Leo sat with me, his arms wrapped around me like a shield. And for the first time, I let the anger come. I wasn't sad anymore. I was furious. Not just at them. At myself for hoping. For waiting. For thinking love could be enough. That package changed something in me. For the first time, I didn't want them back. I wanted to forget they ever had the power to hurt me. But the past has claws, and mine wasn't done with me yet. What happened next would prove that some wounds don't stay buried forever. What would you do if it were you? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe and activate the bell to receive all notifications so you don't miss the next story. For a long time, I didn't know how to carry both peace and pain at the same time. But somehow, I learned. After the package, I pulled away completely. I stopped checking their social media. I deleted their numbers. I blocked my aunt who kept sending group messages with smiley faces and casual updates. As if I hadn't been deliberately shut out of the family. It wasn't easy. Some days, I'd pick up my phone and scroll through old messages, wondering if I had imagined it all. If maybe I had overreacted. But then I'd reread my mom's note, with those cold clinical words. "We are respecting your wishes." Those words lived in my chest like ice. Leo never once asked me to move on. He just held me on the nights I woke up from dreams where my mom was in the crowd at our wedding, smiling like she used to when I was 5. That smile I hadn't seen in years. Instead of mourning, I poured myself into building something new. Our little apartment became a home. Teresa, Leo's mom, taught me how to make her famous arroz con pollo, and gave me old family recipes handwritten in Spanish, even though I could barely pronounce half the words. She told me stories about Leo as a child, and laughed at my terrible attempts at making her coffee just the way she liked it. For the first time, I had space to grow, to be myself, to be loved without having to earn it. I started volunteering at a local school as a reading tutor. It was Leo's idea, after I'd mentioned how I used to love books as a kid, before I was made to believe hobbies like that were a waste of time. "You light up when you talk about books," he said. "Give that to someone." So I did. I spent afternoons helping second graders sound out words, and it felt like something inside me was being stitched back together, one syllable at a time. Still, no matter how full my life became, there was always a dull ache when holidays came around. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Mother's Day, especially Mother's Day. The first one after the wedding, I didn't send a card. I didn't call. But I sat on the couch with a gift-wrapped box I had bought months earlier, a silk scarf in my mom's favorite shade of green. I never mailed it. I left it in the closet until the colors faded from sunlight through the crack in the door. That same weekend, Teresa came over with flowers and chocolate and said, "You don't have to celebrate me, Mija. But I'm celebrating you." I broke down. It wasn't just that she remembered. It was that she saw me. A few weeks later, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to it, it was my brother, Ethan. He sounded tired. Not just physically, but emotionally drained. "Hey, Chloe. I know it's been a while. I just wanted to let you know that things aren't great over here. Mom and Dad, it's complicated. Anyway, I hope you're okay. If you want to talk, call me." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a vague, tired message. I played it 3 times. Then I deleted it. Because in that moment, I realized something that both hurt and freed me. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of them. The idea that I had a family who saw me, heard me, loved me unconditionally. But I did have that. Just not where I expected. One evening, while cleaning out the guest room for Teresa to stay the weekend, I found the wedding RSVP envelope I had sent my parents. Still unopened. Still sealed. I held it in my hands for a long time before placing it in the bottom of a drawer. Not out of sentiment. Out of closure. They chose not to see me. But I chose not to disappear. I thought the hardest part was behind me. That choosing peace meant the war was over. But peace, I learned, can be a quiet before the storm. And when my brother showed up at my door unannounced, everything I had buried began to rise again. The knock on the door was hesitant. Almost apologetic. Leo was in the kitchen, and I was folding laundry in the living room when we heard it. We weren't expecting anyone. When I opened the door and saw Ethan standing there, all the air left my lungs. He looked ruined. His eyes were sunken, his skin pale, his hair unkempt. He held a small overnight bag and nothing else. For a second, I didn't recognize him. "Hey," he said, barely above a whisper. "Can I come in?" Leo stood behind me silently. I nodded, stepping aside. Ethan didn't say much that first night. He sat on our couch like someone who had forgotten how to sit still. Kept fidgeting with the hem of his shirt, looking at the floor, avoiding eye contact. Finally, after we offered him dinner and he barely touched it, he said, "She left." Who? Alicia. Took the kids. Said she was done. That I was just like them. I didn't ask who them was. I already knew. Over the next few hours, pieces of his story came out in broken sentences and half-finished thoughts. Alicia had grown tired of the constant pressure, the expectations, the emotional coldness that Ethan carried into their home like inherited furniture. She told him he was controlling, dismissive, emotionally absent. And for the first time he couldn't deflect. He couldn't charm his way out. She walked away and didn't look back. I listened. Quietly. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because part of me wanted to hear what it felt like to be on the other side of their coldness. To see if he'd finally understand. He didn't apologize for the wedding. Or the years of silence. Instead he said, I think I get it now. What it felt like. To be outside. It wasn't enough. But it was something. He stayed with us for 3 nights. Leo was patient, even though I knew he was uncomfortable. I was too. But I let Ethan stay. Because deep down, I wanted to see how far he had fallen. On the second night he asked, do you think Mom and Dad ever really loved us? Or just the versions of us they created? That hit harder than I expected. I shrugged. They loved the obedient ones. The impressive ones. The ones who didn't challenge them. He nodded slowly. Yeah. I was always so sure I was the favorite. But now, I think I was just their puppet. It was the first time I saw him as human. When he left, he hugged me for the first time in maybe a decade. It was stiff but real. And he said, I don't expect anything from you. But if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I didn't promise anything. I just nodded. A week later, my mom called. I stared at the screen frozen. Leo saw the name and said gently, you don't have to answer. I did. Her voice was weak. Fragile even. Chloe. I waited. Your father had a stroke. The words hung in the air like fog. I said nothing. He's okay. For now. But we're not. I don't know what to do. Ethan told me you let him stay with you. That you were kind. I felt my throat tighten. I need help, she said. Not money. Not anything like that. I need my daughter. I almost laughed. After everything. After the erasure. The silence. The finality. Now she needed me. I said, I'll think about it. And I hung up. That night, I sat on the porch with Leo. The sky was dark, and the cicadas were humming. I'm not angry, I said. Not like before. I just don't trust them. He took my hand. You don't have to. And I realized, I didn't owe them my healing. But part of me still needed something. A conversation. An ending. Because even though I had a new life, some doors don't close until you lock them yourself. And I was ready to find the key. I drove alone. Leo offered to come, but I told him I needed to do it by myself. It was a 2-hour drive back to the town I had grown up in. The town where my parents still lived in that same pale yellow house with the flower beds my mother once prided herself on. Though I doubted she kept them up anymore. As I parked outside, I sat for a moment with the engine running. Just breathing. Preparing. Nothing about the house had changed. But everything in me had. When I rang the bell, my mother answered the door looking older than I remembered. Smaller. Her gray hair was tied back in a messy bun. And her cardigan hung off her shoulders like it didn't belong to her. Chloe, she said, and for a second her eyes shimmered. I didn't hug her. I didn't step in. I waited. Come in, she said softly. Inside, the house smelled the same. That mix of lavender and whatever cleaner she used to obsess over. But there were fewer photos on the walls now. Fewer signs of a life well lived. My father was in a recliner. He looked thinner, weaker, one side of his face slightly slack. He stared at me but didn't speak. I sat in the chair across from them. My mother sat on the edge of the couch, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl waiting for a scolding. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, I said, you asked me to come. I'm here. What do you want? She looked startled. I just thought maybe we could talk. About what? She opened her mouth then closed it. Looked down at her hands. Ethan said you changed. I nodded. I did. I had to. She glanced at my father. He hadn't moved. We made mistakes. I waited. We thought we were protecting you. I leaned forward. My voice didn't shake. You were protecting an image. Not me. Not your daughter. You didn't show up to the most important day of my life. And then you cut me off. You erased me. She closed her eyes. I was hurt, she whispered. You. I almost laughed. You were hurt? I spent years trying to earn your approval, your attention. And when I finally chose something for myself, you abandoned me. She looked at me then. Fully. I didn't know how to let go. How to accept that you were your own person. I was afraid you were throwing everything away. You mean status? Appearances? She nodded. That fear cost you your daughter. I turned to my father. Anything to say? His voice was low, slurred. Too late. That stopped me. Not because it was an apology, but because it was the first honest thing he'd ever said to me. You're right, I said. It is. I stood up. My mother reached out instinctively, but didn't touch me. Chloe, I still want to be in your life. If you'll let me. Why now? She didn't answer. I looked around the room one last time. The silence was louder than it had ever been. I built something without you. A home. A family. And I'm not giving that up. She nodded slowly, accepting what I didn't say. I wasn't coming back. I walked out without another word. Back home. Leo was waiting on the porch. I didn't speak right away. Just sat beside him. How'd it go? He asked. It's over. And I meant it. Not out of bitterness. But clarity. Some families break you. And some people spend their whole lives trying to glue themselves back together with the same hands that shattered them. I wasn't doing that anymore. I had locked the door. But what came next, what came after letting go, was something I never expected. And it changed everything. 6 months after I walked out of my parents' house for the last time, I found out I was pregnant. It was quiet news, shared only between me and Leo at first. We didn't post anything. Didn't announce it with balloons or clever photos. I think deep down, I was still protecting it from the world, from them. Leo cried when I told him. Just sat there, stunned, then pulled me close and whispered, "Thank you." Like I'd handed him something precious he thought he'd never deserve. And in that moment, all the pain we had lived through felt worth it. Every step away from the people who couldn't love me fully had led to this. A chance to start again. My pregnancy wasn't easy, but it was surrounded by warmth. Teresa came over with soups and snacks and stories about her own pregnancies. Our neighbors helped repaint the second bedroom. Even my old college roommate mailed us baby books and tiny socks she crocheted herself. We were building a family from scratch, but it didn't feel small. It felt deliberate. I didn't tell my parents. Not out of cruelty, but because I no longer owed them the firsts of my life. The day my daughter was born, the room was filled with soft light and quiet tears. Leo held her like she was the most fragile thing on earth, and I remember thinking, she will never beg to be loved. We named her Grace. 3 weeks later, I got a card in the mail. No return address. Just a plain white envelope with my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a photo of me as a baby, being held by my mother. No message. No signature. Just the image. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't call. Instead, I put the photo in a drawer, beside the unopened RSVP envelope from years ago. Let it rest there, like the final page of a chapter one had already finished reading. A month later, Ethan texted. He had started therapy. He was seeing his kids again. We met once for coffee, not as siblings trying to repair everything, but as people willing to be honest about the damage. It was awkward, but it was real. And for once, it didn't feel like performance. One afternoon, Teresa sat beside me on the porch while Grace napped inside. "You did it, Mija," she said. "You broke the cycle." I didn't say anything. Just nodded, my throat thick. Breaking the cycle doesn't come with applause. It comes with silence, grief, and rebuilding. But it also comes with peace. That peace didn't fit in my parents' house. It didn't live in their expectations or their image of who I was supposed to be. It lived here. In this tiny love-filled home, where I was allowed to be soft and flawed and still worthy. Sometimes I still wonder if they ever talk about me. If they regret it. But that wondering no longer rules me. Because the family I have now, the one I chose and the one I'm raising, knows me, sees me. And that's more than I ever got from the ones who were supposed to. I don't know if Grace will ever ask about them. If she does, I'll tell her the truth. That love isn't supposed to be earned. That some people will only love you as long as you play their version of yourself. And that her mother walked away so she'd never have to. I chose peace. And peace chose me back. If you like stories like these, click like, subscribe, activate the bell, and send it to someone you think will also like it.